Right, here we are tonight with Scott Felton, North Wales based UFO researcher and investigator. Hello Scott.
Okay, mate.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us how you got into the subject of UFO research?
Purely by accident, really. It was, I'll take you back, it's something I've related before, but in the 80s, I was living in Liverpool then, and I used to do a lot of duck shooting and stuff like that, and I used to go down on the River Mersey, and I never kept records of anything which I saw unusual other than ducks, but on this particular occasion, so I know it was only about a fortnight before the season started, and I don't know the year, I'm guessing it's about 84, perhaps 85. I went down just before dawn onto the banks of the Mersey, and I had a spaniel with me, and what I used to do, there's a sewer pipe coming out, and I don't know anything about ducks, but they love sewage. So they all flying in, you know, and what all I was doing was counting numbers early in the morning, in readiness for the 1st of September, first day of the duck shooting season. So I was just down there, and it was just before dawn, and I know there's a lot of light pollution there and background lights and that across the river, but the tide was sort of out, so you've got your river channel, a couple of 100 yards away perhaps, at the most, and you can see the wading birds, all the seagulls all running up and down the edge of the tide, and me and the dog just walking along, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the morning or something, and the dog was actually quite an obedient dog, and she used to stick her nose through the fence sniffing scents on the wind and all this, and I was sort of walked along towards where I needed to be, and the dog just stopped dead, and it was sniffing like that, and was calling out, taking no notice, and sometimes when she was out, if she smelled something like a rabbit in the grass or a pheasant, she'd cock one leg and the tail would go straight, you know, or like she was pointing a bit, and she was doing that, and she just wouldn't come away. So I went over, and you sort of got this fence, and I looked over the fence, and you got a bit of a seawall underneath the prom, probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 feet down or something, a little bit more, pitch black in the shadow of the wall. I'm looking down, nothing there, then all of a sudden this light comes on right beneath me, and it was a glowing orb, probably about the size of a cricket ball. I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. Didn't no idea what it was. I had no interest in UFOs on that. It didn't mean anything. It was just this curious ball, and I could see it was hovering. It was a few inches above the mud, and I could see it was a dull light, and it seemed to be, the impression I got was about the size of, I don't know, a cricket ball perhaps, but it seemed to be, that was the size of it with the glow. So I'm assuming that whatever was inside it, if there was something inside it, was smaller, and it was giving this glow. But what caught my attention was it lit up the ground underneath it. I could see it was hovering, and it just came on like a light, and it didn't make any noise, nothing, and I'm staring at it thinking, what the hell is that sort of thing? And then all of a sudden, it seemed like a few seconds, but it could have been quite quicker, it moved off, and it was going across the mud towards the water, and it was a few inches above the mud, and we kept a straight line, but it seemed to wobble. That's the best way to describe it, or a slight zigzag, you know, but it just, you know.
So were you on the Liverpool side or the Berwyn side?
Liverpool side, yeah. There's Dear Carston near the end of the promenade, Oxford.
A lot of people saying orbs or things that glow like that just have that wobble, don't they?
Wobble wave, isn't it? Yeah,
just a lot of people
say
like a falling leaf motion.
Yeah, like a leaf, yeah, but it hovers forward. And it just carried on like that, and it made no noise, nothing. And it travelled this distance, I'm not really sure the exact, it could be anywhere between 100 and 200 yards to the edge of the water. And it could have been an optical illusion or something like that, you know, where it was seeing things. However, I mentioned before, there's these flocks of birds swimming along the edge of the tide. So like dunlins and redshanks and whatever, and seagulls, and this ball light went right between them, and they all got up. And
so
that made it real.
Not an optical illusion.
That made it real.
I don't know many optical illusions that escape birds away.
Yeah, and all the birds, all the alarm calls.
And your own
and I know the alarm calls because I was interested in. They were all distressed.
So how old were you then?
I'm 56 now, so you work it out. It was about 1985.
85, alright, okay.
Yeah, because I never kept the exact year.
20.
It was just some.
Three
I'll
then,
be
was
in
it?
20. Yeah.
So what sort of effect did that have on you? Did you start questioning things then?
Well, not initially, no. I'd say just liked it, put the birds up, and then it went out. Now I don't know whether it went out because all the birds panicked around it, or whether it just went into the water.
Right.
And I thought no more about it. And then some time later, some years later, I came to discover there was a UFO group in Liverpool, and I saw something like actually in the Liverpool Echo. Someone had seen a triangular shaped craft, or claimed he had. I can't remember now whether it was coming in out of the water or it was going in the water. And I at that time I didn't even link that with what I'd seen, because I'd never seen anything like before. And I assumed my dog sensed this object, you know, and it could hear it, or maybe something above my hearing or whatever.
Yeah.
But whatever it was doing in the dark. But I assumed my dog was right above it. She could smell it or hear it or something. And I looked over, and it's like someone looking up saying, like, oh shit, you know, bing, and the light comes on. And I believe now that this object, whatever it was doing it in the dark, unlit. And I like to think that it lit up it was like it was powering itself up, and lit up, it moved off, you know. Before that, I don't know what it was doing. It could have just been sat on the ground, it could have been hovering black, I don't know. That's all I ever saw, and that's the only thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Strange.
I read something recently that Liverpool is one of the main places in Britain at the moment for UFO sightings.
Well, the thing about the Mersey is it's a big river, but it's where I was, the river's getting on for like a mile and a half wide, but that is wide as, say, where Speak Airport is, coming across Salesmere Port. It's like 5 miles. It's got a very, very narrow neck in Liverpool, where the ferries cross between Berwyn and Liverpool, and then the tide will rush through there. You know, the water's turbid all the time. It's the water's quite deep anyway, and it's got a strong tidal current. Well, if you wanted to hide something on the bottom of there, you know what I mean?
It's a good place to be. Like.
You just be no one would know you were there. And even higher up the river, the waters in those days it was heavily polluted anyway. It's a lot cleaner now. It was heavily polluted, and even when the tide's out, the channels are quite deep, and a small craft could easily sit there on the bottom. This is just an assumption of mine, and no one would know it was there. Higher up the river.
You couldn't really send someone down in a underwater gear and say, okay.
Well, just beyond where I was is Garston Dock. It's still there today. It's like an associated British port, private dock. In the old days, the Guinness boats used to go in there from Ireland, and the boats could only get in there when the tide was in. When the tide dropped, the dock gates kept the water back with the boats inside, you know. But that's the only shipping that ever went up there. So nothing really big went up the river that high. But there's plenty of room to hide something depending on its dimension, you know. And of course at night time things can come and go and no one ever sees them. But I came across records of people saying they'd seen things coming out in broad daylight, and every now and then they appeared in the paper, these stories. But there was no connect between that and this ball of light. Only when I sort of got interested in it, I realised how common these balls were. And of course it was all something within the UFO field, so obviously straight away there's a connect between this ball of light and other objects people claim they've seen, you know. And but it was years later. I was in Wales then. I've been in Wales 30 years. But when I was living down the Llyn Peninsula, down a place called Clonogval, I was down there, and this is really where I sort of got interested in it. I always saw this as a curiosity, what I'd seen this ball. Like I mentioned it at work in Liverpool, everyone just looks at me, you mean, you know, drinking or something. But
typical reaction.
Yeah, I hadn't. But I wasn't particularly bothered, but it's just stuck in my mind as something really odd and curious. And then years later I'm here in Wales, and this where I got myself into a bit of trouble, like. And again I gave a talk about this a few years ago in the Pro conference in Lytham. I still wasn't interested in UFOs, but I used to run a metal detecting club. I used to organise metal detecting rallies on farms, and lots of people had come. Sometimes 100 people had come, and you all paid a couple of £3 each. Give the farmer 100 quid, and the rest of used to fund the next thing. You know, I used to do these rallies. I used to do a lot of metal detecting then myself, and I used to canvass farmers. I used to keep my records of who were contacted, and farmers aren't the best communicators in the world anyway. Like, it's a bit of a generalisation, but it's true. So some of them, but only a small number, they're polite and literate as well, you know, and they're well mannered. So they write back to you, if only to say, no, I don't want you on my land, you know. And I always put stamp addressed envelopes in, and it always annoyed me when I did that and they never got me stamp back. But nonetheless, that's what they did, and we used to canvass more and more. And this part of Wales where the around the Berwyns, it wasn't a part of Wales I knew at all. It's still a part of Wales that people just don't know. It's all around the coast and a bit of snow down here, you know. Yeah. But there's big chunks in North Wales where no one ever goes. The tourists don't go, nothing. Just the odd walkers. And I used to keep some crew records about what came back and whatever. And one thing I did notice was that I canvassed farms around Llandrillo, which has always been the focal point for this UFO thing. And I didn't get a single reply back, which was odd. Nothing. I said, I just want to go metal detecting on your land. And he
suggests they don't want outsiders coming in.
Well, no, this was just the farmers themselves. It was DSA. I don't know what the names were, you know. And
it's courtesy to answer back, you know.
Yeah, I noticed they didn't get stuff back, and I was just in the pub one night. This hotel it was, Clunog Hotel, it's gone now. And I was just talking with a gang of lads who was 2-on-2, and there was a lad there whose family came, funny enough, from Carrog. And I happened to mention it's strange, you know. I've written to all these farmers here, and it's like a big black hole. Nothing came back. You know, and straight away this lad came out and said, oh, that'll have something to do with the UFO, like what UFO? And that's where it started getting interesting, like. He said, oh, it's a UFO crash there years ago. He didn't even say what date it was or what year, you know, just said years ago. And it sort of piqued me interest a little bit. So I used to offer the farmers 100 quid, which in the 90s was a lot of money, you know. And so I did it again, and I offered them 200 just to see, and nothing came back.
Oh, that's surprising, because farmers are tight.
They
want the money.
Oh well, yeah.
I've never.
You think you talk their language when you offer them some money?
Yeah, well that's what normally happens. But nothing came back, and then one time I got a phone call, and this is something else that annoys me, which I've come to learn over the years. This idea that all ufologists are interested in crop circles, as an example, you know. And in the village I was in at the time, before I moved into Clunog, I was married a woman from there, like, a crop circle appeared in a field on the edge of my village. I'd gone past this a few times. People were talking about it, didn't mean anything to me. And I got a phone call. Invite me to go to this crop circle. Go to the crop circle, there'll be something of interest there. And there's some weirdo on the phone. Yeah.
Which is out of the blue?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think landline number at the time. And didn't take any notice of it, like, because at the time I had a shooting business, and I used to get people ringing me up anyway. Yeah, on the phone, like, you know, you're going to burn in hell and all this sort of stuff. All these fluffy creatures having it, like. And it was another weirdo on the phone, simple as that, like. And nothing happened, and then it got really awkward, because I had no connection between that and these letters. And then I was up in the game all the time, and still nothing came back. But someone was interested in the fact that I was sending letters to all these farmers. It wasn't the farmers, someone else, but it must have known about it. Yeah, and then there was a big incident which ended up on the HTV News, the BBC Wales News and everything, is I was married by then, but it wasn't long after. Someone went and killed a cow in a field right on the edge of the village, like. Except I just had a metal detecting rally on this farm. Yeah, and whoever did it, I think initially was just sort of a character assassinate my metal detecting enterprise.
I was going to say, yeah.
And a lot of the farmers got really upset about it, and the police came. I got pulled in for it, and it was all this, and I'd been guns seized for a while. I got them all back and all that.
Well, the cow was shot, was it?
Yeah, and I ended up in Carnarvon police station getting questioned about it, like, your name come up, you know.
This is down the Clean Peninsula, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. And this incident was on the news, it was in the papers and everything, you know. And of course, being a small community, everyone's saying, you know, Scott's being pulled in for that, like. And I'm like, what's going on? You know. And then it was quite funny. I gave an interview to Richard Hall about this as well. This copper, and he just didn't see, he was a sergeant, like Lewis his name was, and he just didn't seem to know what he was on about. It's almost like he'd been fed information, asked these questions, you know.
Did you notice in his tone of voice as well, like the way he
Well,
was asking questions?
what got me was he used this peculiar word, which you'd never hear in farming circles in Britain. He referred to this dead cow as a steer. That's an American
That's
word.
an American expression, that
Yeah,
is.
never heard of it. And he said the steer is being killed, like, you know. And I was like, well, what killed it? And he said to me in the interview, like, we don't know. He said it's been killed, shot in the head, perfectly. And I'm not a good shot, like, I'm certainly not a marksman either. And this was done in the dead of night, apparently it was in the dark. And someone managed to put something between this cow's eyes, sort of thing. They sort of butchered this cow. Some of the fur off this cow, the meat or something, I was presented with photographs. They were planted in a wood that I used to shoot in, but the intelligence wasn't up to date because I'd stopped shooting in that wood 18 months previous because my permission had run out on it. But they seemed to think I was still there.
So why would somebody want to implicate you in or frame you?
Well, I believe this was just to assassinate my metal detector.
The metal detector.
Yeah. To do away with me.
This is before you were known as an
Yeah.
investigator for UFOs.
This was in the 90s, you know. That would be about 1996, which incidentally is a date I'll come to later. But this happened, and of course it came to nothing. You know, no charges were brought, nothing. It was just all sort of dropped. We're not going to take this any further. The damage was done then, you see.
As soon as your name comes up now, that's it, you know, you're the guy that shot the car.
And it was basically, I believe, just to try and stop me doing that. But when they came to my house, they broke into, well, I heard this off someone else in the village because it was only a small village. The police turned up and they left. And when I came home, I went in, straight away I knew something was wrong, you know. The house looked sort of right, but it wasn't. And I spotted this piece of paper on the settee, and it was like a piece of paper from the police. We paid a visit to your house, you know. And it was, they listed the name of the police officers who were there, and we've taken your guns and all this. Please come to Carnarvon police station. Of course, when I did go, they put me in, they arrested me then on suspicion, and then I got questioned, and it all got dropped in the end. And a little while later I got my guns back and everything, but the damage was done. But I was talking to one of the kids in the village, and he said, oh no, there was more than that. There was plain clothes people gone in there, like, but that way they weren't listed. And I don't know if this is true or not. It's only something I was told. But they weren't on this list of policemen. And again, what they didn't sort of take much notice. They took things, you know, they just took bits and pieces. And because of what this lad had said in the pub about flying saucers and things like that, I had a couple of pieces of paper of things with UFO and that, and this, and I got a magazine from somewhere, and it was gone. And I didn't notice for months that it was gone, it was just there.
I mean, the lad mentioned this, so you went and got a couple of magazines, you were reading up on it?
Yeah, just I was just curious to see what this is, you know. And I still had no interest in UFOs, you know, just did that. And months after the event, like, I noticed this was gone. They'd taken that away, but it wasn't in the inventory of what they'd taken. Yeah, they even went into the freezer and took a leg of lamb. Actually, they took this piece of meat and they had it tested, or they said they had it tested, in case it was a piece of this cow. It was bollocks, like, you know, by the expression.
It just sounds like they're making it up on the spot.
Yeah, but the policeman who interviewed me, initially this sergeant, he used this word steer, and he didn't seem to know. The question he was asking, it was almost like he was reading off a sheet. Ask Scott this, ask Scott that, like. And I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on, you know, this has suddenly all appeared out the blue.
So what do you think? Somebody was using the police to get to you?
I don't believe for 1 second the police were actually directly involved in this. I think someone went to the police after this event, give them my name with no connection to it whatsoever, pull them in, whatever, knowing it wasn't going to come to anything. It was pure character assassination. And of course they were relatively successful, like, that was the end of that. And but when I realised what was going on, so eventually I twigged this got something to do with this Llandrillo area. And of course by then I knew a little bit about this flying saucer business. And I started read up a bit more. Of course, no internet then. I wanted to go to the library, it was 10 miles away in Carnarvon, like, you know. And that's eventually when I got to know about Margaret Fry. She seemed to be the one, and I contacted Margaret Fry, and I found her very accommodating, you know. As I mentioned before, she's been happy to share her work with people, not necessarily always to her advantage, like. But I read up more and more about it, and she used to show me a notes and this, and look, and I just said, Margaret, you know, some of these things, I'm just a rank amateur. I said, but some of these things just don't add up, you know. And well, where do you think it's wrong and all this? I said, well, you know, this just couldn't be. So I got a background in gamekeeping and stuff. And I've always been a shooting and fishing man all my life, and I've been out hundreds of hours, thousands even hours at night, nothing better to do, waiting for a float to go or the rod tip to go like that, looking at the skies. I've never seen anything odd. I've seen plenty of lights in the skies. I've seen, I know what satellites are. I've never seen anything in the night sky that makes me think, oh, hang on, that's a bit odd.
I've had a few hoax calls.
Yeah.
And I've still got the details, even though I know.
Oh yeah, you still keep details on. But all the information she was receiving was about the Berwyn UFO. Because she, at the time, she was the premier sort of researcher about it. Tony Dodd referenced it.
And this is in the 90s now, is it?
This is in the 90s.
Yeah, so
Tony Dodd, when he was active, he referenced this, but he referenced lots of different cases and that. She collected cases, but she specialised in the Berwyn. And I said to her, like I said, I'd like to get into this. I said, but I'm looking at this with fresh eyes. It's all new to me, you know. And we spent ages together, and we went through all the diaries and everything. And what we did was, we got the background of the Berwyn case, and we basically took out every single thing that was anonymous and put it to one side. And all that left was the bare bones of the case. And then we started looking at things like, you know, police reports and things like that. And even the police reports of that night, all the records were destroyed. And at the time, it was Gwynedd Constabulary controlled the whole of North Wales. But eventually it became North Wales Police. And what they were saying was all the old records of everything, not just this, other cases and things like that, it was all these records were destroyed. But then it became quite remarkable that the only records they did have were the names of people who supported anything other than a UFO crash at all, you know. And he said, well, why would you just keep these and not other?
Supported anything other than a UFO crash?
Yeah, it was basically to play it down. It was more like the Andy Roberts scenario.
Right.
Nothing happened. It can all be explained away.
Sort of so all the details of witnesses, all that was lost?
Yeah. So
but they did keep the skeptics' side?
Yeah, well, another thing that was, one of the things that was that there was people, all the names were wrong. There was one guy, his real name was Bristow, they called him Bisco. There was a guy in East Llandrillo himself, he's gone now, but his name was Brown, but he changed the name of his house.
So what you're saying it was just meticulous destroying of records and anything useful that could have
they left
helped
behind.
investigators.
Yeah.
Just keep all the nonsense stuff and get rid of all the
they
stuff
left
that
behind
could
was
have.
stuff to throw people off the scent.
Yeah.
And of course that's suspicious in its own right, you know.
Right. So you discovered that, so you decided to go up there and investigate yourself, do a fresh investigation, did you?
Yeah, I took Margaret up there a few times. We went up there, and I mean she couldn't walk anyway, so. And what I started doing was looking at things like Andy Roberts, for instance. I mean, he's a smart guy, and he used to boast this, you know, and how meticulous he was with information. And of course, because I got like a shooting background in the countryside and all that, I until the sort of started going to the Berwyns, I didn't know anything about it, but I knew about the terrain and stuff like that. I knew it was a grouse moor and stuff like that. And I thought, well, you know, he's saying that there was poachers camping on the mountain on the 23rd of January. And it was the wrong mountain anyway. He actually moved everything from one mountain to another to try and debunk the light this nurse saw. Because she was the one who discovered it. But
Pat Evans.
Pat Evans, yeah. And she only found it because of police corruption. I prefer corruption, the word corruption rather than police ignorance. It just wouldn't be on the 23rd of January in the freezing cold winter that someone would be in a tent on the side of a mountain where I knew it'd be in the middle.
How often we hear this in cases?
Yeah.
One story was that the lights that she saw were actually lampers.
Well, actually they were lampers.
Yeah.
But what Andy Roberts didn't disclose, and others, can't just blame Andy, is they were on the mountain immediately above Llandrillo. It's called Cadair Bronwen. The UFO was several miles away on another mountain called Cadair Berwyn. That's where it was when Pat Evans saw it.
Right.
And it was there. And there's no vehicle access onto this
Cadair Berwyn rather than Cadair Bronwen.
Yeah. But Llandrillo got Llandrillo was miles away from the, several miles from the UFO. Whether it crashed or it landed, doesn't matter. Llandrillo was several miles from it. Because the police searched the hillside the morning after, because an RAF search team searched the mountain the morning after, right above the village, because the poachers' lamp, they call them poachers, actually were there legitimately, because their lamp beams were seen just after everyone come out of the house when this air tremor occurred. And that led to the thought perhaps a plane had crashed on the mountain above. Everything focused on Llandrillo. But of course the UFO was there. And what somebody had done, they tried to move events there to there to do away with this light on the mountainside that Pat Evans saw the nurse. And it was just all blatantly wrong, you know.
Was this anywhere near Kevin Koch?
That's Kevin Koch as a ridge. That comes later in the
I know
story.
Margaret's mentioned that, Kevin Koch.
Yeah.
Okay, jumping ahead then, go back to it.
No, it's all this went on. There was other things when people had got lost on the Berwyn and broke a leg or something, you know. The local search and mountain rescue team would come and get them, like they do on all mountains. On this particular instance, they'd attended civilian air crashes, military air crashes, things like that in the past on all the mountains in Wales. And the military was no exception. They still go, you know. And on this particular occasion, it was opened as an official log that the police believed a plane had crashed above Llandrillo on the hillside because people had heard this rumbling, heard an explosion sound. When you come out the house, there's a light going round above the ridgeline. So they thought, it could be a plane crash, and they started ringing the police. And the police switchboard was inundated anyway because this earthquake was quite big. This air tremor across North Wales, everyone's ringing in the police and they're overwhelmed. say the focal point was there. Now with Pat Evans, who was a nurse, everywhere, most of the babies around the Bella and everywhere were delivered by her, you know, over many years and things like that. And she felt this tremor like everyone else, but she tried to ring the police several times and couldn't get through because the switchboard was jammed. And eventually she got through, but she got through just before 9:30, and she got through to the switchboard in Colwyn Bay, which was North Wales, with the constabulary headquarters then. Now they knew what was going on, and I think some very high-ranking police officers knew what was going on, and the high-ranking police officers knew the military were on Cadair Berwyn, and there was policemen had been drafted in. We know this for a fact. Policemen had been drafted in, and they were ensconced in Llangeithlon, but the people who were living there didn't know they were there because of the events of the earthquake and people coming out their houses and things like that. That's where the exposure came from, and people said, like, oh, why are they all there, you know?
Right.
And they were already there, and I believe to this day that the reason they were there is if the public got wind of something going on, they were there to interfere with the public. So, you know, so it was trying to suppress anything, because there was a military operation going on the neighbouring mountain. And anyway, it came to be that they got exposed because of that, because people, unfortunately with them, came out with this air tremor and all this. But Pat Evans got through to the headquarters, and she said, I'm Pat Evans, I'm the district nurse. I think there's been a plane crash on the mountains. Now the police at that point knew that there was a search going on with their officers, with a guy called Hugh Lloyd, who was only 14 at the time. I know you.
Like a farmer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They commandeered the family Land Rover, his parents weren't in, they took it, and when they were off the road, he drove them around all the farmland above where these lamps were, this lamp was. But what was withheld...
Old Cadair Bronwen.
Yeah, Bronwen, yeah. But what was withheld from as we call it, the official version of events, which of course is a lot of rubbish.
Official cover-up.
Yeah, which was promoted by people I just mentioned. They'd already left the mountainside before 9 o'clock, because the lamp in those days was like a hot air lamp with a normal car battery on your back. I used them myself when I was a kid, because that's all you had in those days. You just wired the things off, your lamp come on, and a little switch to switch them on and off. And you got about less than an hour's burn time if you were really good. But Andy Roberts knew nothing about lamping, and that was his downfall. He knew nothing about the countryside, grouse management and things like that. So when he said, oh, they were camping on the grouse moor, it was in full view on Main Road. There'd be 4391 going over the Berwyns from Bala to Oswestry Way. It was just ludicrous. You would not sit there and do it. Plus also, this light was static, and Pat Evans herself watched it for 10 minutes in total. It never moved. A lamping is a mobile activity. You're walking into the wind. Yeah, but he didn't know that. He just said it was a hunter's lamp, a poacher's lamp.
Wasn't even the right mountain.
No.
But it's amazing how quickly you can find holes in this story, but that still sticks with most people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They moved all the stuff. He tried to move it to Cadair Berwyn to cover up this, explain away this light.
It muddies the waters, it creates confusion.
Well, what happened? These lads who were lamping, they one of them carried a gun which he didn't have a licence for, and the police actually moved their car. Blocking the road when they were going up on the mountain. And the story was they took the tax disc. The car was open, no one locked the cars in those days. They took the tax disc, and of course they turned up looking for their tax disc, and then the police were like, what were you doing on the mountain? And they said initially, they lied to the police, and they said we were camping. And this original statement, I've only heard this as testimony. I've never seen any police statement saying this. You presume someone wrote it down. They said we were camping. Andy Roberts got hold of that information, and in the early days of his debunking exercise, he said they were camped on a tent on Cadair Berwyn on the 23rd of January, and the inside of the tent was illuminated, and that's what you saw. When he discovered that they'd lied to the police, and it became known that they'd lied to the police, the story changed. And he then said that the police had conducted a search on Cadair Berwyn, and these lights that you saw approaching the UFO were police torches. When I spoke to
so he moved the location to Cadair Bronwen?
4 miles. 4 miles.
It's quite a serious mislocation, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he also played on the words. You see, it's people just say the Berwyn Mountains, the Berwyn Mountains anyway, at the height of them. There's a range of 4 peaks, and
each peak has its own unique name, isn't it?
yeah, and but people say, I do it myself now. I'm always up there, like, and say, I'm going up the Berwyns. I don't specify a place. I don't specify which peak I'm just going to Berwyns. I'm up Berwyn, singular, but it still means plural, you know, and it still doesn't specify a place. And what happened, there was a big reluctance to identify individual mountains. So instead of saying Cadair Bronwen, you avoid Cadair Bronwen and just say Berwyn, because the UFO's on Cadair Berwyn, and all of a sudden it becomes that mountain. You just play on the words. And I'm more specific, and that's why I always isolated the mountains. And of course it went from a tent to a police search, and then Hugh Lloyd says, no, we're on that mountain there. It's our land. And we went round, and the police never got out the vehicle. Other than once, because we got Scott stuck in the butt.
Obviously they didn't find anything on that mountain. Because
there's nothing there.
Yeah. They were in the wrong place.
Meanwhile,
what was happening on Cadair Berwyn? Were the army up there?
Well, the only real reference we got to that is we always look for an explanation. I don't believe now there was a crash, it was a landing, because we got witnesses now who say, yeah, we saw it land. It came down, stayed a while, and it went of its own volition.
Do you think it just coincided with the earth tremor that caused the bang?
I think it's a coincidence, yeah. The original stories were, which I believe now is all disinformation, the UFO presence on Cadair Berwyn, someone decided, let's say it crashed, because they knew there was a possibility that the military being rumbled. So let's say there was a crash. Let's make up the story, the military extracted all this material, big clean-up operation, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a wild goose chase. Everyone goes looking for evidence about a crash. In fact, the thing just sat there.
On a different mountain.
On a different mountain. And then it went of its own volition. So I say over volition, because it's possible that it was spooked. Because I believe that all these lights was a military unit approaching it. Now, I don't believe they're going to attack it or anything like that. If you went to the location and saw where it was, the last thing you need is a big glowing object.
Do you think the military knew it was going to appear?
Yeah. I pondered about this for a long time, and I thought, how could they possibly know that someone was going to crash on that mountain?
Or even land.
Or even land.
Well, it's been suggested by many people now that not only is the military aware of what they are, they know how to track them and where they're going to come in.
This is, yeah, of course, this technology might have been around for some time. It's certainly...
Yeah, because we're talking 1974 now,
it's certainly credible now anyway. But
44 years.
What I pondered about was, how would they know? If it crashed or it landed, how would they know it was going to be there? You can't predict where something's going to crash. There's a Chinese satellite coming down now.
I just want to...
No one knows where it's going to hit.
Just to clarify, you reckon for Berwyn or Cadair Berwyn, the military story of crash and retrieving
it's all disinformation.
It's all disinformation. Yeah. So it was there by its own accord, and then it just left because either it was spooked or it was just time.
Yeah,
well, I believe that. I believe, it sounds like crazy, but I actually believe that the military their role was to gather as much intel as they can about this object, but to shoo it away. I know it sounds bizarre. They were never going to attack it or anything like that. Because if you went on the B4391 road, which goes over from Ballard over the mountains, and you went to where Pat Evans was, and you got this bright object on the side of the mountain. In 1974, there's not a lot of traffic around, especially that time of the year, that time of night. But there would have been. And I believe that UFO, judging by what people were saying, is it was already in the area for up to 2 weeks before that it must have been coming down, and that's how they knew. And I believe it was coming down in the same place. For whatever reason, it was coming down in the same place, and they didn't want it there because it was just totally exposed.
Have you looked into the...
exposed in that the public could see it?
Could see it, yeah.
Yes, they did.
No, I was just going to say...
Only the people that are using this road round across could see it.
Right.
And I also believe that the reason they chose the 23rd of January, it was no coincidence they chose that night. There was a scheduled meteor shower that night, and I believe they chose that night to have a go at it. So if anyone did see anything or hear anything, we just blame the meteors.
Sorry, is that the Leonids? Is it?
I don't know which one that is. I was just going to say, if you go back to the explosion or the tremor, did anybody or if you yourself ever figure out what that may have been?
I believe it was a coincidental tremor. I did a documentary with Richard Hall a while back, and he spoke to people who were involved in sort of earthquake stuff, and he concluded from what he'd been told that in fact that this epicenter of the earthquake was actually above the ground. Now whether...
Some sort of airburst.
Yeah, now whether that had anything to do with the UFO...
So it wasn't the Bala fault, which they were blaming. It was the fault of the Bala fault.
Yeah, well, the guy...
No fault of the Bala
fault. The guy was a guy called Dr. Roger Musson. He works with the British Geological Survey. He's the one who wrote a paper, and he used the Bala fault and said it was these plates rubbing together and all this, and it caused this earthquake and all that. And that's what normally happens.
Yeah, fault slips.
Yeah, but of course he's right. Dr. Musson is my enigma. So
this airburst could have been caused by a meteorite?
I don't believe it is. If
a coincidence. If a meteorite comes in just as a tremor happens, meanwhile
these meteors could have been hundreds of miles away, I don't know. But bringing things such as to that location, if there was any truth in the idea that something happened above ground, which was enough to rumble the ground over 60-mile radius sort of thing, but not leave a crater, I'm thinking along the lines of things like supersonic stuff. You get these booms, don't you? Well, why not, for whatever reason on this occasion, maybe it is linked to, or was linked to this UFO. Something arriving.
Coming back to Penturk.
Go on, you say it, mate. Go on. Now, what it is that just over, on the 26th of February 2016 in Lantris and in a field of Penturk, right, there was a plane many days before circling around, 2 army planes, circling for no other reason, like they were just keeping an eye out for something.
Something that was perhaps...
Yeah, something that was expected. They expected it, that much we do believe now. But just get into the tremor part, right? We've had like military involvement, foreknowledge, and then it comes to a point where somebody hears a loud explosion or the ground say... Well, sorry, yeah, I mean, somebody told us and then we investigated more and we got a whole group of people now who have come forward and said that there was a loud explosion, building shook, especially the Royal Glamorgan Hospital, people who worked there, who were even a patient there or two. And I filled out the Freedom of Information request for the British Geological Survey and I got a response back, and fair enough, for the time it was, about 4:20 AM in the morning on the 26th, there it was right there. It's only a little blip. Just a little blip there, right? But it coincides with the time that people heard this massive explosion, this loud boom, just 2 of them actually. Some people said there was the first one. That was the main big shaker, that was the one that shook the buildings and woke people up and everything. Then there was like a second one, not so loud, but clearly distinctive as well. I don't know what that's about, but I mean, we're thinking airburst, or are we thinking explosion? Because it was quickly followed by Smilog Woods being closed down, roads being closed off.
Because before this, the big UFO was seen.
Yeah, helicopters were circling the area, and the smell of sulphur was coming from the area.
Yeah, but the parallel with the Berwyn thing is that it was a bang, or 2 bangs in this case. The building shook, and it showed up on a geological survey tremor sensor.
But of course, the military were all there, and it was all closed off. I mean,
And the geologist told you that it was caused by a man-made cause.
This particular one.
How would you know that?
Well,
unless you knew.
I think it's the way the signature is, isn't it?
What it is that in order to determine the actual location or magnitude of a earthquake, they need at least 3 different readings, so they can triangulate the position and the depth and everything. But it seems that the only one that picked up any sort of signal was a reader in Monmouth. And when I actually wrote to the British Geological Survey through the Freedom of Information, they basically said this is the only one. And I said, could you clarify maybe what this is? He says, same excuse, we don't have enough information on other readers to determine exact location. So the only thing they say is that it has to be from the local area, the area that it came from. And, you know, it's either human or some sort of a machine device or machine activity. Now, I don't know what else was going on.
They don't offer you a third option.
An airburst.
Well, for instance. I don't know what else was going on that night in other areas, but there was a lot of military machinery and equipment at that time. I mean, if you combine it with what the witnesses told us and what we've discovered since, it seems that there was an explosion in. Well, I don't know what it was.
Followed by a smell of sulphur.
Yeah,
smoke in the air.
I've noticed in a lot of other, just getting to your Berwyn Mountain case and our Penturk incident case and a few others as well. We just had Gary Rowe tell us, about the Llanilla one.
Llanilla,
yeah. Again, explosions, shaking. Middle of the night, that's another thing. Early hours of the morning, always out of a.
Always after dark.
It's always, and even though Penturk is more, the fields in Penturk are more closely to populated areas. If you go to the area yourself and take a look around, unless you're actually in the field or passing on the road, you're not going to see it. There's only a few houses in the area that actually have a good clear view of it.
Difference with Llanilla was nothing was heard when the farmer didn't hear anything. He just went out in the morning and found all this stuff on his land.
Alright, there was no explosion. No. But there was evidence of some explosion or something, wasn't there? No. Okay, not for that one then.
If they know
I heard all the
Which one was that?
I think of the one on Anglesey.
Okay.
All the stuff was spread over the ground and through the trees and everything, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, there were trees felled in Smilog as well. The initial witnesses who...
Smilog is the forest at Llantriston.
In Smilog, the 2 main witnesses who witnessed the whole thing, and their friends went up to Smilog on the very morning after and the following day, and they followed the debris trail of broken trees and canopies and branches and everything. They led right to this one spot, and you can see there's
this is the morning after the event.
It's on the They happen in the early hours of the night.
Yeah.
So by sunrise, there's still adrenaline pumped and everything.
No police or military about.
Military were there. They were definitely in the area for a number of days. On that particular night, that's when it all really got excited and things were going on. And but the official explanation that the media put out, the Wales Online articles, it was just Project Exercise Chameleon. Yeah. But every time I go looking for information on this, no one seems to know anything about this exercise.
I've got
quite a few actually.
And nobody was informed that there was going to be a military exercise.
I mean, the police, even if the police lie, which they do frequently.
I think they are.
Which they do frequently.
But
you don't have to watch the BBC News to know they lie. It's big. If it's there's probably nothing bigger. You can forget all your wars and your corruption and the government and power and all this. There's nothing bigger than the UFO subject. That's to me. They destroy an entire city.
And the alien agendas and stuff.
Yeah, destroy an entire city with a nuke and blame the Russians. Just to shut any evidence. With these with that sort of agenda, you can file all the freedom of information requests you want, and if
you're
it's
not going to get anything
not
back.
there. Now, but the other thing is as well, you see, there's something I learnt. When I got good responses from the MOD for stuff I asked. You expect them to be a bit devious perhaps, but I always found them quite good, and sometimes they come back and say to you, we haven't got any information about this, and your initial response is to think they're lying, and then over the years I've come to believe that in fact it's highly probable that this subject is so sensitive.
It's a need to know, isn't it?
It's a need to know.
One department of the MOD won't know.
The person who writes back to you and says we haven't got any information is telling the truth.
Because they weren't told.
They haven't got any information.
It's interesting.
It's somewhere else.
It's not even a case of someone saying no, you can't tell them
It's
this.
compartmentalised.
Yeah, they can't access that information, so they have no choice but to write back to you and say, we don't know all the information.
Well, you know how it goes, don't you? You may get a general who's like 4-star in the US military or something. He's probably got a higher clearance than the lieutenant who works in the branch, right? But he's probably got more access to the information because he's directly involved. But the general only gets to see certain reports and certain things are classified.
I think it's
as you say, compartmentalisation and
it's
the need
always
to
been
know.
the case that you can probably have a private in the British Army or the Americans or any other nationality for that matter who's got higher clearance than the president of the actual country, you know, because they happen to be selected for that programme.
Yeah, and that's your job.
That's your job.
Apparently, Gary Rowe was telling us earlier that Nick Pope is actually commander.
This is good.
And years after he was working in the MOD, he was talking with Gary Rowe, and Gary Rowe was Nick Pope was boasting, saying he can access any information he wants.
Well, he should share it then.
And so Gary,
Good one.
Gary asked him, can you look up the Clanilla case, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Can you look up about this Clanilla case?
He gave him some cases, didn't he?
So he actually went on the phone, spoke to somebody, and he said his face went ashen because he was basically told, no, you're not allowed to have any information on that, and he had to tell Gary then, no, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah. I I seem to remember something. Didn't Gary collect some of this material and have it encapsulated in plastic?
He did actually show us.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I did hear about it. Yeah,
it's worth going to visit. Yeah.
I'm sure if you went to speak with him, he might.
Well, apparently it was I think it was John Hanson told me something a while ago. This place where this event happened, there's this metal still all there. It's all over the place. They never cleaned it up.
Well, no.
They cleaned up a lot of it apparently.
Gary was due to go there again, his second visit, to do a metal detecting sweep of the forest nearby.
And funny enough, the farmer was very friendly with him on this.
The farmer phoned him up. He said, "You better be quick because they taking it all away. They're chopping all the trees down." So Gary got there, and true enough, the trees were going, but they were JCBs removing the earth.
Yeah,
they've done that with the Pen Turk as well. They've felled all the trees and you've taken the soil.
I'll tell you this, as someone who's a metal detectorist, it doesn't matter how much earth they remove, and try to cover something up like that. If you search diligently enough, you'll find something. You don't care how good they are, they always leave something behind. Unless they literally extracted to the bedrock every last grain of soil within 10 miles of what they're actually the field they're working on.
It's a 10-mile empty square block of land, like
it's just not going to happen. What I find curious about that, what you've just said, I assume from the description you've just given, the farmer concerned owned the woodland.
Not sure about that. I think it's Forestry Commission.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering.
No, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
it's not called Forestry Commission in Wales now. It's
old.
National Resources Wales.
That's the old Forestry Commission.
But back in
environment.
Back in 1982, 83, when it happened, it was Forestry Commission then.
Yeah, they called it wind damage. I said.
Oh yeah.
No, you don't.
Wind damage. You're chopping down or felling trees because of wind damage. All right.
A whole forest.
I mean, just where. I mean, I'm not being funny, right? But there's two locations where our story takes place. Number one, Pen Turk Fields is where the main event took place, where this pyramid formation of lights occurred, smaller orbs and interaction with some of them for the witnesses, the two main witnesses. And there's this little green one that's sort of like just circling around above it, like it was, I don't know if it was having its playtime or it was doing reconnaissance. Yeah, it was wobbling away. Yeah. It was all this again. And it went over Tynacoid Road area. Tynacoid.
Get Welsh right.
Hey, I'm Swansea boy. Okay, Tynacoid. And there's trees over there now which have just recently been felled. Okay? But that's one area it sort of went over, and then later on it went in the direction of Smilock Wood, where, as we discussed a minute ago, the explosions and the smell of sulphur and the roads and everything being closed off. Well, just about a year ago that was all felled. Huge area along the bike trail, and it's just like, you know, it seems every time, whether it's I don't know about Berwyn, but Llanilla, Penturk. And
There's a Havern Forest. There's another incident about in Mid Wales. You heard of that one? Havern Forest.
Well, it's like we're not. It's like this.
The detail.
It's like Ben Elwyn and Jones came down to SUFON last month. The Nottingham one. They were felling trees again. Explosions.
Replacement of soil.
Yeah, all this replacement of soil. It's like, I don't know what it is. Whether there's something about these craft. Whether they're, I would have to say extraterrestrial, because if they were our own craft, why would you need to go to all the trouble?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm sure.
There seem to be some unit in the MOD, whether it's the Americans or the British. They've got a big sort of clean-up operation. If something comes down, they're there straight away like that. And they've got a systematic process of how to do it.
Yeah.
They know.
We're noticing patterns. I mean, you know, you can find patterns in just about anything now. What do they call it? Pareidolia or something? That's where you find patterns in anything. But you study the cases enough times, and you find the same pattern all the time. Military, some sort of explosions, maybe wreckage, felled trees, broken trees, witnesses seeing things many days before. You know, the cover-up is ridiculous. You know, there's always some debunking.
The official statement that it was a military
yes,
exercise.
you know, news come along and quickly say it was just an exercise or some sort of explainable phenomenon, as they say.
In the 50s especially, fighter aircraft used to come down like every week. You could troll through the newspapers. There's a report somewhere of an RAF plane came down because, you know, there's technology in the 50s, the planes weren't that good, but they used to crash left, right and centre. And there was no big fuss about that, you know. There wasn't a big cover-up. They admitted it was a plane, and you could, farmers whose land it was on could see it's a plane.
I saw this in a Berwyn. Originally, even when I first got interested in it, it was a crash, because that was the only information that was available. Only when I started looking at it, I started putting two together. This isn't right. And then I discovered that Tony Dodd had queried it as early as 1996, 1995 sort of time.
Did he speak to Pat Evans?
I have no idea.
Have you spoken to her?
I haven't, no. She won't speak to me.
No, she's sort of gone undercover, disappeared.
She, well, there's all sorts of stories. I mean, I've actually...
Because her and the two daughters were the only civilian witnesses, weren't they?
Well, they were credited with
for the landing.
They were credited with it. Pat Evans said it was a district nurse. When she got through to the police, the police in Colwyn Bay knew that they had police officers doing a search with Hugh Lloyd above Llandrillo and Cadair Bronwen, the lower slopes of Cadair Berwyn Mountain. And that was the location of a suspected plane crash, because that's what the locals were ringing in about. We think there's a plane crash.
So they were genuinely there looking
everyone
for a plane
else,
crash.
Everyone else in North Wales was ringing in because there's an earthquake. Yeah. But in the village they're all ringing in because they think that plane crashed, because they could see this lamp flashing about.
Did the police in Colwyn Bay, did they tell Pat to go to Cadair Berwyn?
No, they didn't tell us anything. She said she was a district nurse. Her two daughters were trained in medical stuff as well, although she's obviously the primary one. And she offered her services in case.
Let me guess, they weren't required.
Well, they didn't even say that.
Oh.
What he said to her was, he said, yeah, thank you very much, we'll accept. But he didn't tell her where to go.
Ah, right, so it was just
it was
just sort of like a polite no.
It was a put off. Yeah, if you thought a plane had crashed there, and there could be casualties, yeah, and a nurse comes, or a doctor or someone, and says, I can help.
Yeah, within minutes.
You're going to send them there, aren't you?
Well, it's like...
Proceed up there, contact sergeant or whatever, and he'll guide you there, yeah? Because clearly there was someone in charge. There had to be someone in charge.
Well, from us, our
and that wasn't the case.
Our investigations, you know, with the banging, the Smilog Wood, somebody was it discovered that the hospital was wrong and said that their services were not required?
Not aware of that, don't know.
I think that's what one of the statements said. I'm not sure, but
it
seems to be the case that when it happened, the hospital was wrong, and that's what they said. The services were not required, even though there'd just been a big bang about a month.
Who rang who?
Well, apparently they rang the Royal Glamorgan Hospital, and I don't know exactly if that is 100% true. We're still trying to work it out, but at least we've got witnesses who said they were in the hospital, they heard the explosions, and it seems like no one was in a rush to get over there, or no one wanted them to go over there, you know, just in case maybe someone was injured, because there was a helicopter that was forced to make an emergency landing not long after.
Yeah.
At
is that a parallel with past evidence though? So what we're saying is,
it seems like when the emergency services would be needed, no one seemed to want them in the
emergency services offering their help.
I don't know.
Not supposed to be an ask, because like Pat Evans, she offered her help as a medic.
So you think with a big bang going off.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. I'm just wondering
what they did with Pat Evans, you see, they didn't
being medically trained, they would want to help.
But they didn't say no, because if it would look bad if a doctor says you've got a suspected incident here.
Right.
I'm almost on your doorstep.
So they didn't say no, but they didn't actually give it any.
I guess what I'm saying,
they just said, yeah, we'll accept that. Go and see what you can do.
I guess what I'm saying is this: is that you know, Pat Evans being medically trained, getting stories of a plane crash, and obviously she would be in a position to help these people, innit, if that is the case. Now you got Royal Glamorgan Hospital. Now already we've had planes and helicopters circling, making a lot of noise throughout the night, and then all of a sudden, you know, big bang just outside the hospital. I thought some of the nurses and some of the doctors maybe would have made inquiries into this, but it seems no one wanted them over there anyway. You know, and then I'm just trying to say that you've got a helicopter making an emergency landing. I mean, it seems like no one was hurt, but it just seemed that when we've made inquiries into this, no one seemed to be interested in asking for their help.
The biggest pain in my backside over the years I've got into this is how gullible ordinary people are.
Oh.
You know, and how they respond to authority. I mean, I campaign against the private security firms and that, nicking people for faggots. That's just something I'm on at the moment.
I don't like these people.
Yeah,
at all.
but when it is, when people just come up to someone, they flash an ID, which could be a Mickey Mouse on it. They got some sort of pseudo police uniform or some pretend authority, or a high-vis jacket.
It's been around for years.
You know what you can do? You put a high-vis jacket on. You can go anywhere you want.
It's the British condition in it.
All the people are dumbed down to accept this authority. And
you can just be a parking meter tender, and all of a sudden you can pretend you can act like he's London police.
People, when
Scotland
someone,
Yard.
when one of these clowns who were just civilians, as an example, they got no authority in most cases. They come up to you and they say, if they're impolite about it, excuse me, you've done this, and I want to issue you with a fixed penalty notice. Yeah, as one example, and everyone goes, and sometimes they haven't even done anything wrong, but they admit I must have done it. I don't think I did, but I probably did because you're saying so. And there's this desire, and it is a pain in the backside to me, this desire almost by people not to get involved. So when something happens, you know, like on the motorway, you get a crash, and the cars are all there, and the ghouls are watching them clean up the mess there. But that's as far as it goes. They watch and then they drive past and they go. And 10 minutes later they've forgotten all about it. They're talking about EastEnders or something important, you know. But, yeah, you know where I'm coming from there.
Yeah.
But when you see someone cutting trees down, if you try and cut a tree down on a road, a street tree in Swansea, people are straight on it, you know, what are you doing? You know, and someone might ring the council, why are you cutting that tree down? You know, what are you going to do? You know, we went and consulted to the locals and all this. You might get people involved like that. But when people start cutting forestry trees down, they can hide behind the state and say, well, we're just felling the trees because it's a crop. Yeah, and they need to be felled. The fact that they weren't due to be felled for 10 years or more.
It is really just a
no
lack
one
of
goes
education.
up and challenges them, you know. If I was able to be in a position now where, let's say, well, I like to think anyway, let's say the Berwyn event happened today, and I got wind of something, I went up there and there was, let's just say for argument's sake, there was police there, you know. I'd be like, they might say to me, you can't go there, you know, and I'll say, okay, fair enough, what's the incident? You know, because the police got that authority, there's an incident, but you can't have an incident without paperwork. And what's happening
there don't
here?
seem to be any.
Yeah,
so
what's happening here? We've got incidents without paperwork.
So the bottom line is that you believe it wasn't a crash, it was a landing.
It was
Cadair Berwyn, not Cadair Bronwen.
The Bronwen had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
All sorts of things. I mean, Jenny Randall sort of muddied the waters, perhaps innocently, but at the time, I mean, she was a big authoress, you know, and she's writing all sorts of stuff and made a name for herself, and people respected her. She could be for and stuff like that. But she, for me, she had this interest in stone circles, ancient sites, and this idea that UFOs are attracted to ancient sites and things like that.
You noticed that a lot
Yeah,
too.
I don't believe in it at all. I think it's a lot of rubbish. But just above Llandrillo is a big stone circle called the World Tour. The stone circle, you can look at it, it's there, there's 1001 pictures on Google Images about it. And she went there, and I don't believe for 1 second she was trying to cause trouble, but she went there, and she went there with a Geiger counter, allegedly, and she claimed that the readings inside this stone circle were different to the readings outside. Well, if it was as basic as that, there was nothing scientific about it at all. And it could have just been a background radiation or whatever. I don't even know what type of Geiger counter he was using, and you can't use them for all types of radiation anyway. But then apparently the press got hold of it. Now Charles Bunneth, I've just come past that today. Yeah, I mean it's miles away from Berwyn, but the press jumped on it and seized it as a cancer cluster. That was all rubbish. That was just sensationalism.
Just muddy the waters.
Yeah, and yeah, it could be something like muddy the waters.
Disinfo, innit?
Yeah, and of course, here just making a simple statement like she said, I went there with a Geiger counter to a stone circle because she happened to believe had a connection to UFOs, UFO visitation, and she says made public that she had this funny reading. All of a sudden, there's a whole new disinformation type can grow from that. I'm not saying she created it. I'm saying she could have created it inadvertently, and then the press got in, and there's all the kids are dying of cancer. It was all rubbish. It didn't happen.
Yeah, birds fly backwards because of this, like.
So, get back to this Kevin Koch.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Well, that's pretty easy. There was a guy called Mike Saville, and Margaret Fry had interviewed Mike Saville in the early days, and she had all the records about it. And we were going through the records and whatever, I come across this Mike Saville, and he claimed he'd seen this UFO land. And I'm like, gold dust this, you know. And it just so happened that at the time he lived in this little cottage which he was renting called Garthgoch, above the neighbouring village 3 miles along the road called Cadair Berwyn. It's the same village Pat Evans lived in. She's in the village. He's on an outlying sort of primitive cottage on the hills above, about 2 miles outside the village. And he came out of his house because of this earthquake, this tremor. But he didn't see, of course, someone's hunting lamp flashing round. He saw this big light in the sky, which he'd never seen before. And he watched it, and it was just hanging there. And this was, would have been, that tremor was 8:38. There's no dispute over that. 8:38 in the evening. He was out a minute or so later, looking at this thing. And he actually went, he got his missus out. He's divorced from her now, but he got her out, and his kids were too small to remember this. We had the kids, and he went to the next farm. The farm's called Cagpant, and there's a guy there called Leon Pritchard. Now he appears in Richard Hall's video.
Yeah, I've seen that.
There, yeah. He told them about that. He knew about this thing. They all went back to Garthgoch. Leon Pritchard was only a kid then. His parents all came back. I don't think Leon Pritchard actually saw it. I think his brother did, but Owen was young. And there was another neighbour, a woman lived in another house nearby. They all congregated in his yard, and this light's there. And by then it's like 9 o'clock, getting there just after 9. It hadn't moved. This huge white light in the sky, as they could see it from their angle. And what was fortunate about his yard is he's got his house here, and he had a barn there. And he said in the interview he stood on this like ledge step thing on the side of the wall, but he got a perfect straight line view straight across the Berwyns, and it was gold dust for me because I'd never been able to pinpoint where this thing was. And we went there and we were looking like this, right there, and then he described it, and he said about 9:10 it started ever so slowly sinking, like a setting sun. He said, but as it came down, he said it disappeared. He said the light went out, as it was going down.
What time was that?
This was about 9:10. It started coming down.
What time did Pat Evans see it on the
10 o'clock.
Right,
So was it for like at least a good hour then?
Oh yeah.
So
it's about 15
the likelihood is that they saw the object coming down and then Pat Evans saw it on the
later. She never saw it move. She saw the light, what appeared to be sat on the ground on the side of the mountain. Mike Saville saw it, and all the other witnesses saw it coming down. But when he was telling me about it, I was curious about why was it disappearing? And anyway, I went back a couple of times looking at the scenery from where he was in daylight, and I got the maps out, and I could draw a line on the map. I could draw a line on Google Earth straight along this wall, and it went straight out across the Berwyns. So we knew we had this line of sight.
Yeah.
And all this Kevin Cork was, it's a ridge, it's a bit of a hill in the middle distance. And we couldn't see that in the dark, although we could see it in daylight. Yeah. But he never twigged. In fact, what it was doing, it was coming down and it was going behind it.
Behind Kevin
Because the land behind.
Onto Cadair Berwyn.
Yeah, the land behind was deeper.
Yeah.
So it went out of his sight, basically.
Went into like the valley.
Yeah, and then landed on the mountain. But he couldn't explain that at the time. So I'm there with me my mouse going like this on Google Earth, and I got all the high points, and of course Kevin Cork was right in his line, and that's what it went behind. It's just a ridge. But of course I used the parameters of his yard, which I had a definite on the wall, I had a hedge here, and I put those two lines straight across the Berwyns. So a corridor, if you like.
So Google 3D Earth, you managed to do this on.
And then I got Pat Evans' position. Now Pat Evans was when she came up on the part of the B4391. She took a minor road from where she lived, joined it, and come up over onto the mountain. Now one of the things I noticed about Andy Roberts' attempt to debunk her, because I looked closely at Andy Roberts, because he kept saying stuff how meticulous he was, and I kept finding these mistakes, and I thought you wouldn't make so many mistakes. And then I looked closer and I realised these weren't mistakes at all. They were serious attempts to rubbish what people had seen. And he said that in the dark she had no points of reference to where this object was. So the reason he said that was so that he could try and explain away that light anything he wants. Because she couldn't say exactly where it was, he could then say, well, it was this, it was this, it was this. And in fact, when you go up the road, there's forestry in there now in places now, but the road goes up like that and then goes flat for about 2/3 of a mile, and then starts to drop down again on the other side. And so when she comes up, there's a point where she's looking to the left and she can't see this UFO because of the terrain and trees and things. And as she comes up, all of a sudden there's a point where you might call A, where it comes into view. And then she goes along the road a bit, curious about this object, stops a car, looking at it for 5 minutes in the distance, and then she drove to a little turning point a little bit further on, and it was on the old county boundary then, in Meteorite and all that. She turned round, went back to roughly the same spot, so she's looking out the other side of the car now, the right side, looking at this object. Another 5 minutes, and then she headed off for home, because she knew whatever it was, she didn't think it was a plane crash at all. She didn't know what the hell it was. But she knew it wasn't a plane crash, and she knew she couldn't do anything anyway if it was a plane crash, because it was too far across.
Didn't there was an interview with her on a Channel 5 documentary, is it? Or Channel 4 documentary? But she said there were lots of little lights around it, as if it were people with torches.
Yeah, there's been great efforts to try and rubbish these lights.
So she assumed that if it was a plane crash, there were people there.
She thought whatever it was,
there was a rescue team.
This was some sort of rescue team there, some sort of thing. You see.
What do you think those little fairy lights were? Were there people with torches, maybe?
I think they were military. And I think they were there to spook it. And the reason I think it was military, I always suspected it was military. There was never any sort of proof. And then there was a bit of a disinformation campaign against Pat Evans, because Margaret Fry can back this up. Margaret Fry interviewed Pat Evans in her own house, and she took another couple of people there. And Pat Evans showed them a piece of paper which she scribbled on, saying that she'd met an army wagon coming back up to the main road as she was going back. Now that got out into the public domain, and it suddenly evolved into she was threatened by the military, they had her at gunpoint, all this, you know, who are you? You know, they physically stopped her, detained her as it were, and they checked it out, all this sort of rubbish. All this sort of rubbish is out there, yeah.
Let's try that.
Oh, there's a little peg under that, that's what it is. Yeah, and all this,
table.
yeah, all this sort of blew up. And in fact, when Margaret Fry interviewed her, she produced this piece of paper, and she'd scribbled this note that she'd met an army wagon, and it was all civil. She did speak to him briefly, and he just asked her, have you seen anything like this, and this, that and the other, and she went on her way. There was no hint of animosity or abrasive behaviour by the military, not negative or aggressive, all hunky-dory. She went, they carried on up the road. She just assumed it had something to do with what she'd looked at.
Was witness testimony that the military were there though?
Yeah, that was that, yeah.
That.
Now, Andy Roberts turned up and he wrote his sort of debunking tome about all this, and he claimed that she'd showed him a piece of paper, and he's written this, it's in the, you can read this, it's all online. He claimed that she'd produced a piece of paper to him that she'd never seen anyone. Well, why would you write something down about something you'd never seen? Because it would never happen, it would never cross your mind. He actually turned the story round, but he didn't know that, I don't think that Margaret Fry had seen this. And I made a point of mentioning this, a few things I wrote about, and I said it, and anyway, he seems to have backed down on it now. But in more recent times, she changed the story, and she seems to have changed her story in 1997, and that's when Margaret Fry was approached by a guy called John Williams, who tried to sell her this story about how the crash came to be, and it was a military operation in the Irish Sea. It's you might see it online as Operation Photo Flash, but the term photo flash had been coined as an operation. It was two things fused together. It was a photo flash event where a photo flash was used to photograph and illuminate vessels from higher altitude aircraft for photography purposes, wartime stuff, but it's still doing it. And the operation, just some journalists fused the two together and called it Operation Photo Flash, and it stuck. And this John Williams tried to sell this story to Margaret Fry to account for the UFO crash on the mountains. But of course, later years, he appeared seemingly because Tony Dodd had published this reference that there might not have been a crash. So it was like a sudden rush to keep this crash scenario going, because it was a disinformation threat to start with. And he pushed it, and then of course Russ Keller got involved in about 1999, and he's promoted it ever since because no one else was stupid enough to take the story on. They targeted Margaret Fry because she was the leading person at the time. She was doing a bit of writing and stuff. They targeted her. They wanted to convince her of this operation in the Irish Sea to account for the crash, but this was like 1997 now, to up to 2000. Even in 2001, this John Williams recontacted Margaret Fry after she told him to get lost, to say Russ Kellis has got this evidence that there was an event in the Irish Sea, and it was a faked letter, fake content letter from the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency at Holyhead. And since then, been able to connect John Williams tentatively with someone in the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency in Holyhead.
It's just
he told Russ, contact Holyhead, and they've got some information for you. And then they give him this fake letter backing up this idea of a military operation in the Irish Sea.
You do have to ask.
It's all staged.
You do have to ask, don't you? I mean, if there's nothing to any of these stories, why do they go to such lengths to lie about it? And then if someone with a bit of brains and a bit of patience can see through
It
it.
draws more attention to it.
I know. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, does
Richard
it?
Hall come up with a good phrase, and he's mentioned it.
People get bored of it, do they? Or?
He said it's the disinformation. What they do is they muddle everything up. The reality is there, but they cause so much chaos by stirring up and clouding everything.
And eventually people get bored with listening to
Yeah,
it.
but also no one knows what's true or not, you know. And rather than lie about a particular thing,
like you said at the beginning of the conversation, what you did with Margaret Fry, you discounted all that which had no source.
yeah.
And you just went back to
Yeah,
bare
went back
bones,
to-
didn't you?
yeah, went back to
it's the
basics.
best way, yeah.
And the thing is, I dare say some policemen would say this, detectives, but the reality is, if you get, say, 3 facts that are irrefutable, concrete facts, yeah, that they can't be tainted in any way whatsoever, they happened, preferably more, the more you've got the better, but if you've got like 3 facts, you've got a skeleton framework, and if someone gives you information, if they don't fit the fact, it can't be true. You know what I mean? So you
Yeah,
put,
and
put it
there's-
to one side.
Worth remembering that.
There is a sort of like alternative side to this, also like an opposite effect. If you're muddling the waters and trying to confuse people, but if you're like ourselves, and we keep ploughing on, keep finding the facts until no one can refute it, the more they try to make it look like it's false, eventually you can use that against them and say, well, have a look here now, see, again and again and again it stands up, so now what do you believe?
Well, one of the other things they relied on, I mentioned Roger Musson earlier, the British Geological Survey. Now this Dr. Roger Musson, he wrote a piece on he called it the enigmatic polar earthquake. Of course he explained the events away, that it was just the Bala Fault and it was a seismic event, which is fine because that's what it is. But I ran into this guy when I was putting freedom of information requests in. It was a nasty piece of work. It turned out that he was in charge of all the data he collected in relation to the earthquake surrounding the Berwyn event. And Andy Roberts, who I discovered later was a very good friend of his, I didn't know it at the time.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, Andy Roberts is boasting that he'd seen maps and documents that had lain hidden in their British Geological Survey archives for 20 years that no one had ever seen, but he was the first. And so therefore he constructs all this information out of this. But he makes the mistake of saying that he's seen it. So when I covered this, I thought, I'm having that. So I actually quoted him, the source, and I contacted the British Geological Survey and I said, I want these maps, I want these documents, Musson comes back, don't know what you're on about. And it's this, no, we haven't got that information. And there was some other woman got involved and she was quite nasty as well. And I appealed it, a review request and all this, no. I said, but that leaves me with the one option, either you haven't got it and Roberts says I made it up, or it does exist and you're obstructing me. And anyway, this went on for like 2 years. And in the end I just had enough of him. I reported him. I made official complaints against him. And this director fella, he got back in touch with me, one of the higher up people. He said, oh, we made a formal complaint, we're looking into this. And then all of a sudden, I got maps and documents. They all appeared. And then they covered up Musson, and they said, you were very unclear in your initial FOI.
They do that a lot.
But I'd quoted the source. It couldn't be any more clear. But that was the excuse to cover him. I don't know whether he got bollocked by his bosses or whatever, because I don't think his bosses knew what he was doing. But what was actually happening was Roberts was given information out into the public domain, which wasn't strictly true, that he'd seen these documents, and this is what they said. But he was relying on his Musson not to give the information out, so anyone else could see that what he was saying wasn't true. The documents were real. What Roberts was saying wasn't. And he didn't want anyone else to see these documents to show that in fact he'd made it all up. So we'd used the real documents, read them, so that won't do, we can't say that, we'll say this. Oh, by the way, if anyone has to see them, don't give me, but I got them in the end. But even they'd be tampered with.
Oh.
So what did they show?
Well, it went on the maps. It was interesting because I found a conspiracy between the police and the
Surprises
the British Geological Survey. Because on the maps, where Pat Evans was on the B4391, that was given the figure, if I remember rightly, C100. Yeah, and all these different places around, all had these code numbers. And her house, even her house was there in Cadair Berwyn, had a number, can't remember the exact number. But it was C100, and I had some maps, and they only had so many C's on them. So my assumption was, if there's 100, there might be a C200, or there might be a C20, because it was just, I went back to them and I said, any more maps? Because I don't think you're being honest, and the enemy categorically denied they had any more maps. But I came across a police document, one of the few documents the police claimed they had, and in there they had a reference, C100, and that proved they collaborated because the British Geological Survey had told me they were just reference numbers where they'd interview people about what they saw in relation to this air tremor, but in fact the police had the same numbers, and to me that's conspiracy. They were using these code numbers, if you like, and they were sharing the information. Well, why would the police be interested in a survey to find out if there was an earthquake?
Doesn't make sense,
They were all in on it. Right from the start, they were all in on it.
Well done you for persevering.
Well, that's just all I've said, is the tip of the iceberg. I can go on for hours.
Yeah, well,
I think we better draw to a close shortly.
I'll just ask about the metal detector. I guess there was nothing found in any of your efforts, because I know with Richard D. Hall you did find a spot somewhere that was of interest. So.
Well, we actually we went there, and Richard had already been there. He actually moved about himself. I took him up there, showed him where everything was, and then he went and had a mooch about, and he spoke to a woman in a house just nearby there, and he did glean some information which I wasn't privy to. And this woman said that wood there, there was something wasn't quite right about the wood, and he said, do you mind if I go and have a look? And he said, well, it's not my wood, but just go in there. And he went into this conifer plantation in the back of this house, and he went along this track, and then he found this what looked like a turning circle for forestry vehicles, because you do get them in all the plantations. Except he was curious about this because it wasn't a normal size one. If you put a wagon in there with all the logs on, it weren't turning in this circle, laden or otherwise. And he told me about it, and we went back and we filmed this, and I took a metal detector just to mess about in there. And we only found a Coke can and I think I found a penny as well.
Oh, so good luck then.
Yeah, but what was interesting about it was all the spoil was gone.
The soil?
Yeah, when they make it, the wood's on a slope, and they cut it.
So one side is higher than the other.
Yeah, so one side higher than the other. And all they do when they do this is they just push the spoil down one side. Yeah, because they'd put this track in before they planted the trees. So they just pushed the spoil down and then they planted up all around it. Well, I went into the trees, and it was the first thing I noticed. There was no spoil, there was no rocks, nothing. So at least in that context it was suspicious, because they'd taken all the soil out to create this turning area, and it was nowhere to be seen. And forestry doesn't pay that well that they can afford to transport.
Do you think that was the actual landing site?
No, it was on the mountain above. However, I do believe, I went in, I know a little bit about trees and forestry and stuff, with countryside connections, and this particular wood was younger than all the other plantations around it. But also, looking at the state of the trees, they hadn't been brashed or anything like that. And I would have thought at the time the size they were, they would have been brashed, had the side branches taken off them, because you have to take the side branches off them when they're quite small, and you do it several times over the lifetime of the tree, because if you don't take the side branches off, they get knots in the wood, and it's no good for building grade. So that's why they brash these trees, and they normally just leave all the branches on the floor to rot. but this hadn't been done, and it wasn't quite right. And I just all like to say.
This is in the area with the funny hole, or
and this wood is the nearest wood. If you're at the top of the wood, you're only within about 600 or 700 yards of where this object was. And and it seems to me that maybe, because we don't know, maybe something went on just these few hundred yards lower that we don't know about, and decided we better plant trees over all this. You know?
I think that's what they do, because if there's trees there, it's
very difficult.
It's very difficult to dig around, and
you've cleared up a few things in my mind anyway, and
well, at least we know there's a lot of similarities.
I'm surprised just how many there are.
And we should. It's often quoted the Berwyn Mountains UFO crash, but it should be it should be renamed.
If anyone's
UFO landing.
If anyone's pushing a crash scenario now, still,
I've always been mixed about it, whether it was a crash or a landing, but it seems more like a landing.
Margaret Fry had 2 witnesses in a little village called Llangunnog, which is about 4 miles beyond where it was. Pat Evans said, I'll quickly mention this, Pat Evans said she was a bit disappointed. One of the things she always regrets is she heard, and where she heard this I don't know, but she heard quite soon after the event, probably within a day or 2, that it took off about 10 minutes after she was there. So it was certainly gone by about 20 past 10. But Margaret Fry spoke to 2 people in this village called Llangunnog, 2 separate women, who claims they saw independently this object pass low over the village, just at roughly the same time as Pat Evans heard that it left the mountain. So we have to assume it's the same object. Pat Evans seems to be disappointed that she didn't see this thing take off, because no matter what she says, and no matter how the fact she's changed her stories and things like this, as someone claims she had a bum to change her story in '97, it doesn't alter the fact that she still believes, or even knows, it was a vehicle of extraterrestrial origin. She can change her story, but she's never changed her story in what she actually thinks it might have been. And it's a UFO. She was only thinking for her, she never saw it fly. So for her it wasn't a UFO, but in the grand scheme of things it was like. So all the times all fit in perfectly.
Yeah, that's something
that all comes together. There's any disputes about that whatsoever.
Timelines fitting and stories.
Yeah. So is it case closed, or do you think there's more digging to do?
There's always more digging to do. Right. The last couple of years or so, I've been buried down, basically trying to chase the debunkers, and their interest. And I'm trying to find a way of. I think I'm making progress. You've got a person here supplying pieces of metal to people, saying this is from the Berwyn crash, and you've got someone here doing the same thing, years apart, doing the same thing. And the interesting thing is it appears that all the metal's aluminium. And as I like to say to people, if you had a random person who was just wanted to, for skullduggery, just for pure malice, to put a piece of metal into the UFO community and say this comes from a UFO crash, and then another person who doesn't know that one thinks, oh, I'll do that, and they do it and give it a piece of metal to someone and say this comes from a UFO crash, the same one, and then they both have the same metal. What would be the chances of that? It's incalculable. And it seems that's what happened. Russ Kellett, he's been in the newspapers, usually an high-class one, like the Sun, with his little blob. Now I know he was given that blob, and he's changed his story several times over the years. But this blob apparently was from the UFO that crashed on Berwyn, and it was dripping metal because someone saw it in the dark, getting chased by a jet up the valley from Capelkirrig, from Bangor, that way, roughly following the A5 road. Someone saw it not only get shot by a missile from the plane, but another version of events, the UFO shot that plane down and crashed on a hillside near Capelkirrig. Again, no one saw any of that. Someone saw the missile at the UFO, but no one saw the UFO. No one saw the plane crash, even though it was shot down. And this UFO was dripping metal. Yeah, how someone could see that from whatever height. It was dripping metal, liquid
So it's
metal.
pretty good, huh?
Then someone retrieved a piece of this liquid metal, and then
Amazingly.
gave it to this John Williams, and this John Williams then passed it to Keller and said it's a piece of the UFO.
Muddy in the waters.
But I bet you, Keller keeps saying he's told people, oh, I've had this tested, but I'm not telling anyone the results. He's a liar. It's never been tested. He's never given anyone the opportunity to test it. And I'll bet my last pound on earth, it's aluminium.
Recycled tin of beans, like, or something.
I'm sure we could carry on
And I'll
talking
tell
about this for
you-
an hour. So.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I've had metal, Mario Fry's metal, tested twice by 2 different independent labs. Richard Holt organised one for me. Phil Hoyle organised the other one for me. He's into the animal mutilation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They both come back with the same result, aluminium. And
Right.
I'll bet Keller's is aluminium. And if it is, the chances of 2 people randomly coming up with the same metal is incalculable, which to me suggests there's a common source. Nice. Use aluminium because it's nice and shiny, and the flying sources are nice and shiny.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright.
That was it then.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, come on. There you go, mate.
Excellent. Scott.